Crassula Ovata must be the most widespread succulent out there. Also known as the jade plant, lucky plant, money plant or money tree, this succulent is easy to recognize and a fantastic beginner plant. This succulent is native to eastern parts of South Africa and Mozambique, but it can be found in gardens around the world. The green glossy leaves turn red at the edges during the cooler months or when the plant is stressed. Crassula Ovata is a small shrub that can grow to about 1.5 meters or 5 feet tall and wide and has a neatly rounded growth habit. Crassula Ovata is incredibly versatile and easy to look after. If you're new to succulents, this is a perfect plant to start the collection with. Although this plant grows best outdoors in a sunny spot, it will tolerate shade and even being indoors if the light is sufficient. Outdoors, Crassula Ovata can grow in full sun or shade. The shape and color will always be better when it's exposed to at least 5 hours of sun. When grown in shade, the leaves tend to be bigger, more spread out, paler, and the trunk can sometimes bend. In the sun, the growth will be compact and the red color is likely to develop as well. Indoors, plenty of light should be provided to maintain the shape. Crassula Ovata can be grown in pots as well as the garden, though it's not very frost tolerant. If you live in a climate where frost and snow is common, a pot may be your best bet. Although this plant will tolerate a wide range of potting media and soil types, when grown in pots, succulent potting mix is the optimal choice. It will ensure healthy growth and a happy plant. When planting in the ground, it won't hurt to break the soil up a bit and mix in any type of potting mix to help the roots spread. When the soil is too dense, it can inhibit growth just a bit, but once potting mix is added, the plant will grow bigger and better. Because Crassula Ovata is not fussy, most potting mix types will do, but stay clear of straight manure, especially when fresh and still very stinky. Water is not a problem for this succulent and it tends to tolerate rain, overwatering and humidity. However, it is always a good idea when it comes to succulents to make sure the potting mix is well draining, the pot has a hole, and when in the garden the roots don't sit in water. Raised gardens or slopes are ideal. When undercover, water once the potting mix dries out completely. As mentioned earlier, Crassula Ovata is not tolerant of deeper frosts and will suffer frostbite and eventually death if exposed to frost for longer periods. But all is not lost. You can grow these plants in pots and bring them indoors when the frost and snow hits. If you're only expecting mild frost, a frost cloth should be enough of a protection. Crassula Ovata will likely adapt to most other climates, though it can suffer a bit from fungus-related disease if you live in the tropics. Crassula Ovata is super easy to propagate and will successfully grow from cuttings, leaves and seed. In my opinion, growing from seed is just not worth it, as it takes a long time before any meaningful size is achieved, and so I'm not really going to cover this. Leaf propagation can happen even if you don't try. I just found this little baby on the ground. The leaf fell off on its own and proceeded to grow without any input from me. Underneath this Crassula Ovata there's a whole bunch of fallen off leaves and branches. They've sent down roots and started growing just like that. I've not touched them or even planted them into the soil. You can quite literally just chuck bits of the plant and leaves on the ground and they'll do all the work by themselves. Many of these rooted bits are pretty small and still manage to survive. Here's another leaf baby and the roots it sent down are quite impressive. When separating leaves for propagation, it's best to take the entire leaf off without breaking any of it. This can sometimes be a bit difficult. Leaves that have been damaged tend not to grow so well, but if they're taken off cleanly, they almost always strike. It's a bit hard with just one hand, but pushing down where the leaf connects to the stalk rather than twisting from side to side seems to work best because the leaf wraps around the stalk. When taking cuttings, you can chop small branches like this as well as the big ones. Cutting the trunk can also be done if you don't want the weight for small cuttings to grow into a tree. I've taken so many cuttings of this particular plant and some were almost the size of a small tree. The best time to propagate Crassula Ovata is in spring after the danger of frost has passed, but cuttings will root from spring to early autumn. Unlike this poor Echeveria, Crassula Ovata is usually not on the menu of most animals that like to eat succulents. You may see aphids once the flowers come out and when the new tender leaves start to grow in spring. Here's what that looks like at the beginning. The tiny black dots on the buds are aphids accompanied by ants. When you see ants on succulents, it's always bad news as they spread, farm and protect aphids and other pests. You may get some root mealybugs as well when growing these succulents in pots, but again, they seem not to afflict damage other than the possibility of spreading to your other plants. Crassula Ovata can suffer from fungal diseases, but very rarely does it cause much trouble. The affected leaves usually drop before you even notice. However, when you do see dark spots like these, it's always a good idea to treat with fungicides to stop it spreading. This particular plant has been sitting in a waterlogged bit of the garden while we had 3 years of La Niña, which means lots of rain and humidity. Still, the plant is doing pretty well considering how extremely wet it's been. Root-bound and extremely stressed Crassula can also easily drop its leaves, though it is unlikely to completely die and will suffer through lots of neglect. This succulent should even live through severe heat waves, but you may get lots of sunburn on the leaves when not protected. All in all, you're unlikely to encounter many problems when growing Crassula Ovata. Crassula Ovata in full bloom is a sight to behold. The flowers come up on a short stalk. Each stalk can hold over 20 individual tiny flowers. The blooms usually start appearing in late autumn, though this may vary depending on where in the world you are. I have some bad news here. Crassula Ovata is mildly toxic to humans but can cause quite a bit of discomfort to dogs, cats and other pets or animals when eaten. If you have inquisitive little humans or fur babies that like to munch on plants, you may want to reconsider getting this succulent or keep it way out of reach. When ingested, symptoms include upset stomach, diarrhea and vomiting. My 2 4-legged kiddos are not really interested in munching plants and I've personally never had an issue growing Crassula Ovata in the garden, but if you're not sure, it's always good to err on the side of caution. There's quite a few different Crassula Ovata cultivars and hybrids out there. They are all gorgeous small shrubs, but be aware that not all are as hardy as the Ovata. For instance, this Crassula bluebird variegata is an absolute pain in the backside to grow as it's very susceptible to fungal disease. Ditto for this Crassula Ovata variegata. And here's a list of the most common Crassula Ovata hybrids you can pause to read. My personal favorite out of the lot is red coral, which has a stunning array of colors and is also pretty hardy. And that's it for today. I hope you found this video useful, and if you have anything to add or a question, you can leave a comment below. To learn more about succulents, you can subscribe to our channel or visit succulentgrowingtips.com. Thank you very much for watching.